Welcome back. We're to the Stay Gold channel. Sorry, we're discussing some TV this week. Some important TV, marketed as the most expensive television series ever made. That was pretty much the marketing. Besides the fact that they mentioned how diverse and opening the window to the Tolkien universe it was for more diverse in women and all that stuff. Not really much about the lore of the show, what it's going to be about. We never really got a solid trailer. So going into it, we know pretty much nothing that it's except for the fact that it is got the name Lord of the Rings tagged to it, which in and of itself, this will be the only time I'll reference it as Lord of the Rings personally. It'll be Rings of Prime
Buzzwords.
from now on because
Buzzwords. Yeah.
that is all it is. It's a Trojan horse. It is disguised, and by the last episode, it opens up and kills us all. So, without further ado, let me get into let me hop onto my soapbox, and I'll open up with a quote from the creators themselves.
Of the
Um,
show.
yes, J.D. Payne and I can't remember the other guy.
I can tell you.
That's
I know
good
they're
to know.
new,
Yeah.
new showrunners in general.
Uh,
They're
Yeah,
pretty
they
green to the industry.
destroyer of franchises.
Mm.
So,
I think that's the other guy. Yeah.
yeah, that's his name.
Mm-hmm.
He goes by DF for short. So,
Alkaloid
the O
of
is
Sauron.
silent.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a quote from them. This was like before the show was rolling out. They're doing their press tour of talking about the
Hyping
show.
it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Really giving us nothing. So they said we spent a lot of time in the writers' room trying to get ourselves in tune with what it meant to be working with Middle Earth and what it meant to be true to Tolkien. We started every day on set by reading a quote from Tolkien himself. So trying to just get in the tune in some ways was a challenge. We see that. But once we were there, you felt like Tolkien himself left all these clues. That being said, I did a lot of extensive research. Um, before Lord of the Rings, the trilogy is pretty much my knowledge. I love those. Those movies changed my life. I read The Hobbit also as a kid. Great book. Would recommend it. I'm now going to read the Lord of the Rings trilogy books, just because I feel like I need to. But I
They're worth
dove deep into the lore, and yeah, I'm still swimming in it, and it's such a rich lore, and it's kind of disappointing the more
Yeah.
I get into it. But
It's
I'm gonna.
crazy how deep it is.
It
It's
is,
nuts.
and it's so extensive, and they had so much material they could have used. Um, but I'll get into that later. I wanted to highlight like three of the characters that we kind of go with at first, and then I narrowed it down to Galadriel, Sauron, and the Three Rings, and then I'm like, I'll just talk about Galadriel's timeline. Okay, so let me read what I wrote, and if you don't like it, sorry.
Grab a blanket, grab something
Yeah,
to drink,
Yeah.
get a snack.
Dig in.
hop on my knee and get ready for Daddy to tell you a nice here story. So Galadriel, so she's seen as an independent person, independent woman. She's visionary. She swears no oath. She wants to see the lands of Middle Earth and to rule a realm of her own in some point. So when Galadriel makes it to Middle Earth with her brother, they hook up with their uncle, the uncle of their mother. This is where she meets Celeborn or Celeborn, however you want to say his name. Keep that in mind as we roll forward. Uh, Celeborn will soon become her husband. Keep that in mind. She moved in with her brother at one point, leaving behind her husband. That's just kind of how they rolled back in the day, I guess. They left each other for like thousands of years and they were just cool with it. But later on
No.
down the road, she moved back in with her husband. They stayed together. They're still married. Keep that in mind. Even when she moves in with her bro for that period of time, right? So Galadriel and Celeborn don't play a significant role in the War of the Jewels. There's many wars with Morgoth in the First Age. They don't really play any roles with that. But Finrod, her brother, is someone who is mentioned in the series. He's captured by Sauron and at the Isle of the Werewolves. This is where Finrod dies. He was saving Baron's life from a werewolf attack, and in the process, died from a werewolf. So Galadriel and Celeborn are out traveling far away from the turmoil that defines the final years of the First Age. And she makes the judgment that defeating Morgoth is beyond them. So her and her husband travel and build up the resistance against the Dark Lord. First stage ends with the War of Wrath, which is a 42-year conflict where Morgoth is finally defeated. Galadriel and Celeborn choose to remain in Middle Earth. A ban was set on Galadriel returning to Aman by the Valar. Keep that in mind. That's right, because she isn't interested in returning anyways. So 750 years go on, and we're into the Second Age. Galadriel and Celeborn move to Eregion, where they chill out for over 400 years. And around 1200 of the Second Age, Sauron puts on his hot body, as I'll call it. It's just his like disguise, you know.
His
You
fair
guys,
form, right?
this is probably repeat if you watch that video I sent you guys. But anyway, he puts on his hot body and he starts to his infiltration of the elves. And during this time, Galadriel is with the dwarves in Khazad-dûm, making contact and whatnot. Between 1350 1400 of the Second Age, Galadriel crosses the Misty Mountains through Khazad-dûm and lives in Lindori Nand, butchering all these names.
What becomes Lothlorien, I'm pretty sure, later. Right?
Yeah. That she kind of restores, is my understanding there. But she's with her daughter, and we don't really know when her daughter was born, but she was born. Also, important thing to note, but with her daughter, Celebrian, Brian, whatever you say, Celeborn doesn't go with Galadriel and his daughter because he has beef with the dwarves. You know, classic elvish dwarf beef. But about 100 years later, in the 1500 of the Second Age, the elf smiths reach peak power and start forging the Rings of Power. They get this information from Sauron. He kind of helps them learn this magic, you know, because he's infiltrating and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But in 1600 of the Second Age, Sauron fucks off. He's gone, right? He fucks off and builds the One Ring, right? But when Sauron, important thing to note here, when Sauron puts on the One Ring, the elves wearing the three rings instantly become aware of the deception. Because when Sauron fucks off, the elves forge the three rings of power. Keep that in mind. Galadriel advises Celebrimbor, also known as in the show Grandpa Brimbor, because he's kind of a turd in the show. Wasted character.
Yeah.
Anyway, the three rings are now in danger and proposes sending them far away from Eregion. The three are distributed to Gil-galad, Círdan, and Galadriel. In 1695 of the Second Age, Sauron captures Eregion and tortures Celebrimbor into spilling the beans about where the rings are. Celebrimbor won't tell him where the three rings are being held, and 2 years later, Celebrimbor dies from the torture. Galadriel is just chilling, and Lorinad using the power of the ring to make the place pretty bitchin'. In 1701, the War of the Elves and Sauron ends with the Númenóreans coming to aid, and Sauron fucks off again. Galadriel and her daughter pass through Moria again and head to the place called Imaldris, looking for a husband, Celeborn. They find him. Woohoo! They live in Rivendell together for a long time. At the end of the Second Age, Galadriel and Celeborn go on a road trip, seeing the sights and shit, eventually making their way back to Rivendell, where they live for many more years. In Rivendell, their daughter marries Elrond. Wait a minute. Yeah, keep that in mind. The half-elf in 109 of the Third Age. So the Third Age has happened. Some shit goes down, and I'm going to cut off some stuff for time's sake. And in 2463 of the Third Age, the White Council is formed. Galadriel is one of the wise, the greatest living threat of Sauron, and is one of the members of this White Council. In 2941,
Gandalf and
and Sauron. Or Saruman, yeah. In 2941, Galadriel helps the council drive Sauron out of the north of Middle-earth at the attack of Dol Guldur. Now we're at the events of the Fellowship of the Ring. So, there's some backstory of Galadriel, our main protagonist. Whether you found that interesting or not, I highlighted the things that I will soon complain about as we dive into the Rings of Prime. So yeah.
All right. Well.
Yes. So left off from our last videos was like episode 4, right? About halfway through.
Yes.
And now we're picking up
Got the
back
back
end
half.
of the season. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what'd you guys think? Opinions.
Well, thanks for the history lesson.
Yeah, you're
I
welcome.
need
No
stuff because, like, I don't 100% care about the world of Tolkien. I feel like that's pretty disrespectful to say because those first 3 movies did a similar thing for me about like awakening something. It wasn't my thing, but I really enjoyed them. So like I come from the stance of like I don't really care about the lore. So like just entertain me. But I understand how infuriating that would be because like I care about the Game of Thrones lore, and if they step too far outside of the boundaries of it, I'd be like, why? So like I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But like, I don't know. I don't want to take the high road because I'm not trying to like say there's the high road here, but uh, it's not great. It's not great. Mostly just dialogue. That's it. Mostly dialogue for me, because a lot of other stuff landed, and I kind of was like really dreading these last 4 episodes. Obviously, really didn't want to watch them, but as I sat there and watched them and put them in front of my face, that they interested me enough to be like, that's a show. Like that's a, they're trying to do some shit here with characters in a world, and I'm like, and I understood the characters more, and like I still don't know half their names, but I can like identify them on screen now, which is nice. Like, so it's not a good show. I mean, especially if you're a fan. So that's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but that's why you don't make these shows anymore. Stop. So like, it's not. I don't blame anyone other than like fandom, because they're the ones that are calling for like IP, and I mean, not really all the fans, because honestly, it's the companies that are just trying to farm IP as well. But I'm stuck in a disappointing world where all my shit's gonna get milked and milked and milked. And this one, I was like, I drank the milk and I was like, it was all right. A little sour, but I put some chocolate in there, and it's chocolate milk now. So.
Well, the thing with the, like, you mentioned being mad at the fandom, but like I went in initially just like, okay, I know they're not it's off from the lore from everything I've heard. So I'm gonna go in as just pure fantasy, see what it's like as a fantasy show as alone. Like, separated from the Tolkien, because it's not anything related to Tolkien. It's not Tolkienian in any regard, especially now, knowing what I know. But even so, it's not good. It's poorly written.
What makes it un-Tolkienian to you? Because I haven't read the books. I'd say Noah's probably our best expert on like actual Tolkien writing, because you've read the books, right, Noah? Like, what about this show makes it not Tolkien, other than a few plot lines of like prehistory that we'll never see? You know what I'm saying? I'm just curious. I'm just posing questions because I actually want to know. So.
Yeah. So by doing one thing, this is what stuck with me the most out of everything I've learned so far. But by doing one thing, they not only destroy Galadriel as a person, character, like everything that Tolkien created for it, right? But it also bleeds into the Lord of the Rings, like after on the Third Age, because by her saying her husband is dead, her daughter is never born, she never marries Elrond, Arwen is never born. Like, that's a whole thing that.
Well, she could still marry Elrond, correct? Like,
no, her daughter doesn't exist. She doesn't have a daughter.
Her daughter marries Elrond.
Yes, her daughter that she has with Celeborn.
Her granddaughter is Arwen.
Yeah,
I see.
And that never exists now, because they're like, well, she needs to be a strong, independent woman who doesn't have a husband. But like, she is, though. She is basically a single mom on the road raising her daughter. Like, her story, her backstory, I felt more emotion listening to these lore videos than I did watching the show, because her backstory is like so badass. She's traveling through all this shit with her daughter. Her husband's like, I'm not going with you because I hate the dwarves. It's like, okay, pussy. She does her thing. I mean, it's sweet. It's a sweet story. Why did they have to corrupt that? So to me, that's where it's like one of many of the others, that it's not really Tolkienian. And the fact that, yeah, sure, fandoms do want IP, but the creators outright said multiple times that they are staying loyal to Tolkien and his works, but they didn't. They lied, blatantly lied. I mean, and that's disrespectful and just kind of, I don't know.
Is
kinda
there
That they are
is there like other major plot points that they disregarded other than that? Because with your history, go ahead, Noah.
Well, I was gonna say, like, Gandalf is constantly, there's like I'm pretty sure there's like a whole book or there's so many like little smaller chunks in books and like that fill out the histories of Middle Earth, but like Gandalf, there's one that's like the travels of Gandalf, basically. And it's just like basically kind of like tracking Gandalf, because he's like this messenger, this bringer of the storm, whatever. And so like it's like half the time Galadriel is doing stuff, or would be doing stuff in this time period, like Gandalf would also be be like involved, at some point. And the wizards in general would probably be involved.
Yeah.
So they've come too late. Is that what you're saying?
I just don't know what they're doing with like this wizard character that is like not Gandalf is Gandalf. Like we don't know,
Right.
you know.
They're
Any
kind of
star dude that's following.
backpedaling now.
Can
They're saying
they-
it's a blue wizard, but it's bullshit.
Oh, really?
There's
Can
two of
they
those,
not
and we never
ever
know their
use
names.
Gandalf? They can never use Gandalf's name. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's not in the appendix or whatever that they got rights to.
That's
don't think-
yeah, that's my understanding. So I don't know if
Yeah.
they'll ever use his name,
Mm-hmm.
but and I mean to the lore.
But they do the whole like the last line of the
Follow your
always follow
nose.
your nose. I was like,
All right.
bro.
That's the only time they can connect with their audience. They take stuff from the original trilogy and just throw it in there.
Which is like so like that's what this their series is so muddled, man, because like that whole like sequence, like the dream nightmare sequence that Gladriel has with once she finds out that
Yeah.
spoilers that Halbrand is the fair form of Sauron.
Yeah.
And then does like the whole Princess of Light or Queen of Light, King of Darkness, and like the whole stronger than the foundations of the earth line. Like
Mm-hmm.
all that is like that. Maybe that's like part of like what feels Tolkien. Like those little flashes feel Tolkien in relation to like the main trilogy, because you know like when Frodo's having these dreams and these visions, and like you get all this imagery like when he puts the ring on, and like and everyone and Gandalf says has any visions, and like the seeing stones. You know, there's a lot of like mysticism built out, and there's like a sense of like interconnected that things like what characters are doing are affecting other
Yeah.
things and events in the world. I just get less of that in this series for some reason. It feels like characters are just like moving out of pure force. Like they're not like nothing is spurring them on a motivational level, you know.
Right.
They're
And
like I'm trying to relate to these characters, but we don't sit with them. You know,
Right.
it's just like nope, get to the next awful thing that happens to these humans try. I don't know. It's just it's hard for me to parse because I have so much love for it and I want
Yeah.
to love it more.
Mm.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, that's understandable. And like to the lore question, Galadriel and Sauron never really like crossed paths in the beginning times, you know.
Mhm.
So like her finding him out in the ocean, um, that didn't never
Yeah, that was
wouldn't have
weird.
ever happened. And her jumping ship before going to the Undying Lands, they would never put her on the ship. She's banned.
She's never supposed to go
She's
there.
never
Yeah.
supposed to, and she's fine with that. Like she's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool, but like she was never would have ever been on that ship. She would have never crossed paths with Sauron, and Sauron should have been in Numenor, like corrupting the king and
Mhm.
all that jazz, but
Yeah.
in teaching the magic of how to make the rings, and all the rings should have been made before the three, because he's there in the last episode helping them make the three elven rings, but he fucks off and makes his one ring, and while he's fucked off, they're making the three elven rings without his knowledge. They put him on, and then when he creates his ring and puts it on, then they realize, oh shit, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
to
another
that
big
point, that
lore
reveal
thing.
of Sauron, was definitely like mistimed or whatever written, whatever it's
Yeah.
paced.
Well, I mean, the big problem I had is I didn't know who that character was. I mean, maybe I wasn't paying great enough attention, but
I
yeah,
don't know if that name's ever mentioned in the lore, at least not in the main books.
yeah.
It's not.
that I-
And like, I don't know. There's just so much. I think with that information, they should have started, because if they wanted to be about like the rings of power and things like that, they should have started with Sauron. The rings already crafted. Maybe he's fucking up Numenor, corrupting that shit, and then started there where he fucks off and goes to make his one ring and start there.
Mm.
And I mean, they could have still done like a Galadriel timeline. You know how Game of Thrones, it had the breaking up of each character's timeline, and you would
Yeah.
be cut to them. Like they
Yeah.
could have done that and still
Yeah.
made good characters out of them. She didn't. She never crosses paths with the Numenorians. I mean, in the lore, that never really happens. She never goes to Numenor. She
Yeah. She's always on the mainland usually,
right
for
and
everything, or in Valinor.
yeah, it's just
No, it's disappointing, like, and that's an understatement for lore fanatics, like
Yeah.
so.
and
And
granted, I've only read The Hobbit, and I read the first book. I'm going to go back and reread the first book and these two now, because like going
Should
back
reread
and
The Hobbit.
watching these lore videos and learning about all this stuff, it's like I have so much more respect now for Tolkien, not just because I love those movies that changed my life, but like learning what he created and spent his whole life doing is kind of like amazing.
Yeah, it's wild. The dedication to it all,
Right.
Yeah.
It's
making
so
up
the
languages.
majesty of what he created is just like I don't know.
I
It's
went on my Goodreads app, it's just like
yeah,
book lists of stuff to read or buy or own, and like
right.
there's like volume after volume of history and characters like
Yeah.
built up from through 4 ages, like which is like centuries of history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like so, yeah. It's like it's insane. I don't know. It's just crazy. It blows my mind to even think about. There's that much like that could
Yeah.
be like distilled into a series like this.
So
We're
much
missing so
potential
much of
that
that.
they just were like, we want to do our own thing. And they sure as
Yeah.
fuck did because yeah, I don't know.
The Amazon smile,
Yeah, right.
smiling at you.
So I
You
guess
watching this?
we can get out of the lore if you want and just talk about the series as a whole. What you
Yeah,
thought
sure.
about just
Yeah, I mean,
as
I don't
a
know.
fantasy series.
I think like it's like you're never gonna. That's why we were talking earlier. It's like you just don't make shit like this because you're not gonna please the fans anymore. Like no fan is gonna be happy with what you made anymore. Like because like I don't know, because to me, anytime you make a property, you try to expand on a property nowadays. Like people ate Mandalorian, they ate that shit up so fucking hard. But to me, you could make similar arguments about being like, well, Yoda's the only fucking, we don't know what creature he is, but he's the only one in that universe, and now there's a fucking baby Yoda, so what the fuck? Like, so you can always make arguments about how, like, shit is different or, like, you broken, but that's because you've taken one person's world, George Lucas's world, you've taken Tolkien's world, and now you're trying to make it something else, like, and it's not their world anymore because only they have the control over their world, like. And that's, I mean, I go back to Game of Thrones because that's my fantasy series. And I think the same thoughts with George R.R. Martin that you guys said with Tolkien is that man's brain is in, that world is inhabited every corner of it. He can like tell you what's going on in that corner of that world for centuries, same thing. And I respect Game of Thrones a little more because they have the direct access to him still, obviously. And he's making ultimate decisions. They don't have that with Tolkien. They have like
surprised they didn't go to his son because I know Christopher Tolkien is like
they have a special thanks.
Helped his dad write or like was like part of his writing process.
And he was on board, and then he left for some reason. I can't imagine why.
Yeah,
they had special thanks, but don't sell your property then. You know, like I'm sorry, like you wanted this $1 billion property to be on the screen on Amazon, like. You made that. I'm on the secondary force of that, just enjoying it because of the mistake you made. And like, I'm not gonna just like, oh fuck that shit. I'm gonna watch it and try to enjoy it because you just dumped $1 billion into it. But like, the mistake is inherent. I understand that. Like, first off, so I don't really judge like misdirections by writers on a level of like, it's their fault. It's like. It's kind of everybody's fault involved for wanting this right now. Like,
yeah, I could see that.
So I just like at the end of the day, the show is like beautiful. Like I'm not gonna lie, like some of the CGI and expansive like scenery is some of the best I've ever seen. Like it's insane.
100% agree about that.
Like I try to find the stuff I like. That in opening sequence was fantastic. I watched it every time because it captured something and like. It had Howard Shore's music. It is back to that original composer. Like they tried some stuff. They tried to harken back some like I can talk about some of the things I enjoyed now, I guess. Like with the Gandalf character and the Harfoots, people would be like, "Oh, it's so ham-fisted. You're fucking just trying to go back to the OG." It's like, yeah, well, you have to show why Gandalf likes hobbits. Like and it's because of this relationship with the Harfoots. And that all felt really good to me as an audience member. To see like him being taught to be good by like the hobbits, the most innocent creatures that are good, you know, like so a lot of that stuff landed. A lot of the like when Sauron was revealed, I was obviously like lackluster as fuck. But when he's tempting Galadriel with the power and like the like you're saying, it's great. Like the sun, you have the power of the sun and the sea, and I'm like there are moments where they're reaching and they fall on their ass because they're trying to find like meaningful dialogue for you to leave the scene with. But I'd say it's like a 50-50 almost. Like sometimes it's like, that's Tolkien. Like that's the majesty. Right. They're trying to give you majesty, give you like heroicism. and trying to like make it special in fantasy still, and not as like cutthroat and disgusting as Game of Thrones. So like they're trying to give you hope and light, and like I get some of it, and then some of it's like that's somebody who's clearly out of their element, out of their maturity level, trying to write something Tolkien. And then sometimes it's like, well, that sounds like they read Tolkien and kind of got it a little, like.
Right.
So it's like I can shit on. I just don't care about the lore. So if I did, it would be
Mhm.
totally different, 100%. But like
For sure.
the show was not terrible. I mean, and especially the last few episodes, I enjoyed them more than the first. Like the sixth episode where it's like the battle scene with Arondir, that guy, I like that character. That was the most compelling character.
Was it the explosion of Mount Doom, the creation of Mordor, or like basically
all that lead up with like the cauterizing of like the arrow? That was the scene that caught me when he's pulling out the arrow, and he's like mushing up stuff, and like that brought me back to like Frodo getting stabbed and they're rubbing the leaves on his wound. Like
That's exactly what they wanted you to feel.
But what do you want from a series that's trying to hearken to something? Like,
that's
if you
the
go
line
too
they
far
want.
out of it, you're gonna be like, well, that's nothing like it. Like,
Right.
So you
Well,
have
it's
to you have to harken back in ways like that are meaningful. And like to me,
Right.
that made that I made that connection because like that movie is special in my brain, and the visceral moments of like the stab, like, so I get
Pieces.
a lot of
There's
the attempts.
pieces there that are
Normally,
like
I would-
so sincere, but other ones
Yeah.
that are just like, this feels like you're dressing something up to be completely different. Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
normally I would be like, yeah, I get the nostalgia, I like it, but it's like that's the only way they could figure out how to connect and be like, oh hey, this is still Lord of the Rings. Remember this from the trilogy? We didn't read the books, but we fucking watched the movie. So I don't know.
Yeah,
That's what it
check
felt like
little-
to me.
little pieces.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I
It's
mean,
like that's the problem you have with these like you're saying, like rebooting IPs is like as soon as you make a departure or decide to do something different, it has to be something that's not like detracting or doesn't feel like it's detracting from the OG. You know, it has to be something that like enriches it more somehow. Which is like I don't know how you even like begin to understand like what that is. You know, like does this add to the lore? Like are we using
Right.
the lore right here? I don't know, like where someone's like, yeah, that's the right use of,
right.
unless you have a fucking
Unless you have Tolkien there in the room.
yeah Tolkien
Exactly.
or a Tolkien historian there,
Right.
you know, like,
And Tolkien's gone, so don't touch his properties anymore.
Right.
Like you're
Right.
fucking. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know, but I mean, to me, there's also like drama elements that are like actually just like the Durin and Elrond debates about
yeah, I
like
would
joining
say
the war and like
are probably some of my favorite parts of
Yeah.
the whole series.
yeah, those scenes actually like had heft or like at least emotional
Mhm.
characters bouncing together, and like I would assume that's lore related to like join a cause for Sauron. Of like I'm assuming the timeline of events is getting muddled, so they're kind of giving you like grand strokes of like personality beats. With Galadriel, I will 100% agree with you that character is mismanaged and kind of tone
So
deaf.
flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they need to get this like heroic woman character. I get it, and she has to be smarter than everyone because she's the wisest in the land, which is you're setting yourself up for a very hard challenge to put a smart woman who needs to prove that there's an evil like before the evil like I mean like they wanted to set the engine in motion to make her know before it, not put on the rings and be like evil. They wanted like an active character to be like evil. We search, go, find, like. So
I wish that's like I think they just sorry to interrupt.
I'm just
like what
yeah.
you were, what you were saying, Alex, is like they could have started this, and again, like I don't think I have anything against like the first couple episodes of the series because it like lays the ground. It's very like you don't know, like it's so one note that you don't really know like what's going on. That's why I think it was like it intrigued me because I was like, where is this going? Like there's enough pieces here for me to like care about what happens and like to have faith in it. But like that's where like could have started so much more. Like if you're gonna give us Sauron or like at least try and deceive the characters in here, like do a little work to deceive the audience too. You know, like give us Sauron at the beginning and then like show him being like putting on the fair form, like or like you're given Sauron and then you're like, wait, this is Sauron we know. Like what is real here? throw him in with all these characters like Galadriel that we do know. Show him like that pieces are being moved and that he's affecting Galadriel's decisions and people's decisions around the world, but you don't really know the intention.
And to your guys' point with the dwarves, that was some of the most, like, to me, best looking CGI in the show.
How's
Was
that do, man? So badass.
But the thing that bothered me is when they walked there. Clearly, I think they just fucking Ubered or something. Didn't have any like packs. But when they got there, Elrond brings Grandpa Brimbor with him, and they get to the door, and the dwarf's like, "Fuck off," and Elrond's like, "I got this. Head home, Grandpa." And Grandpa's like, "Okay." But Grandpa Brimbor has a relationship with the dwarves. He created the door that says "Speak, friend, and enter." He created that with the dwarves. He was there. He has really. Why wouldn't he be the one to? Stupid.
Yeah, there's like the
because
level of
Elrond. We know Elrond. We don't really know Celebrimbor. So we need Elrond to be that guiding light because we connect with a character we already know the name of.
Yeah.
But like Celebrimbor's a badass, and he's been around just as long, if not longer, than Elrond, and he's like the best smith in the land now that his dad. Anyway, that was like, why wouldn't he just be the escort for the dwarves and stuff?
I feel like at this age in Middle Earth, like there would be less of that skepticism that is like trying to be like portrayed so hard as like elves and dwarves, like at this point in time, like they'd be mostly cool because like of what happened through the first conflicts in the first ages and stuff like that, first and second age. So like they'd be mostly understanding and like trusting of each other. It's like this is the age where the men and elves start to like pull apart, it seems, and so I don't like get the whole like trying to hide me through, and like if Celebrimbor is such like this, there's dwarves, man, like they're master smiths and miners and stuff, like there should be more collaboration there. But
to me, like Game of Thrones is successful because they can introduce a character in a scene and be like, "Oh, that's that guy's uncle," and then you'll kind of like they'll do the legwork in the scene and the writing to make that guy like reverent or like it's like, "Oh, that guy's he's a player." And I think they tried to do that with their side characters in Lord of the Rings, but they just didn't place writing emphasis into it. They just placed like face emphasis, like he's on the screen and you see him, and that's the guy. But like, so like when I go to write that scene with Celebrimbor, or not Celebrimbor, with the fucking guy who's gonna walk in who made the little arch or whatever, you know, like with Elrond, is it Celebrimbor? It's like, well, I can like go into. I can make Celebrimbor talk here and like they're buddies. He knows that, you know, or I can just have Elrond walk in and he's going to be the hero here. Like, cause we need to punch Elrond up a little more here to make him like the guy, you know, like, so honestly, I think it's a mistake. Like, I'm not saying it's a good decision. I think that you should take that effort to make other characters pop
more
and
interesting.
And make
some
and if there is a lore rooted with that character, then follow that's the writing exercise for me then, is to like follow the justification of these characters. Like, so I totally get it. And I think I'm like flipping, like it's not like they didn't do justice to the show, obviously. It's disappointing, but I at the end of the day, I like look at it on my movie lenses. So I'm like, it's entertainment here. You know, like, so like, I get it. Yeah, like I'm not trying to be like the defensive guy because it's I would do it differently. So
yeah, right. That's the thing is like you say, you're looking at a movie and for a project like this, like I can't help but like think what if, you know. But like I look at this and like for me, definite highlights, like we were saying, Elrond and Durin, like great scene work and like actual like I don't know character development with Durin and stuff.
Yeah.
When they take major characters like Isildur, for instance, and they're writing like, oh, the building collapses on him. We're keeping him in suspense. He's dead. But like, he cuts the ring from Sauron's hand. That's just like
it's like we know.
Basic knowledge from any. If you've even watched the show, you're like, or the movies.
You should be on the edge of your seat because they're like, will they kill him? We don't. They can do what they're not following.
Apparently, I guess so, right?
Yeah,
Bezos does whatever the fuck.
They killed Celeborn, so I guess
it's gonna be Galadriel now. She's gonna be chopping the fingers off herself, dude.
Right.
Don't do this to me.
With that knife, it's good.
No, she's still gonna do it. It's gonna appear somehow. With the knife's gonna come back and
like I don't know.
I will say if they were able to make, because the way Game of Thrones is like doing all these spin-offs and like trying to find more ways to bring R.R. Martin's lore around and stuff. It'd be so cool if they did like a history or like a series in Valinor or like the First Age, like set
Yeah.
a very baseline like
Yeah, well,
story of
that's
like
to me. It kind of
that kind of
seems
thing.
like they didn't plan like 6 spin-offs. They kind of just wanted this one to be because it's like they're kind
Yeah,
of hitting
right.
some of the beats from what all this lore I'm hearing is like
Mhm.
because like by the end of it
Pieces.
they've realigned with lore with like him creating his ring. They got their three like they're got it and like they're mining and they're gonna wake the Balrog. They're probably gonna rush that. They're gonna push it up in age because they
Right.
want this one prequel to be all everything, not just like
Encompassing.
yeah, because like Game of Thrones is like smartly just like taking chunks out of history.
Mm.
This one's gonna try to
Right.
probably give you most
Shoehorn
everything.
in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a little blendy and a little like out of jumbled like order, but I can
Yeah.
see kind of like the steps that they're trying to follow, obviously in
Mhm.
their own way or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're on a track, I'd say, to go the right direction, but they're like jumping off to like make stops every fucking.
Yeah.
I think that the character you pitch as like the single mother doing it, that's a more interesting character inherently to
badass.
me.
It is.
Yeah.
She has such a sweet storyline, and
Dude,
like,
the her trek from like they
yeah,
basically don't sail to Valinor. They take like the fucking worst possible
right,
way to leave Valinor. They like go way up north and like trek
through the
through
mountains,
a frozen
everything.
wasteland and like
Yeah,
that's
it's
badass.
it
It's
is,
all
and like,
after like a huge elf civil war.
right,
Like I don't know.
and like, if they wanted her, they could have followed her storyline, and then had these wars happening with like even in the First Age, with
Mm,
Morgoth and all that stuff if they wanted
yeah,
to. But no one knows Morgoth. They know Sauron, so that's
yeah.
why they were like, well, we gotta do the Second Age. People know these characters more.
Right.
But
But
like,
like doing
Morgoth
Morgoth
is
would have
like
just
the
like made
bad of the
Sauron
bad.
easier.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Morgoth and Sauron's his like number one man. So like they could have
Mhm.
built that up for like they have 6 seasons or 5 seasons or whatever. Like they had so much time, and if they just took the time to like give you good
Flesh it
characters
out.
and
Yeah.
right, and like Galadriel, it says like that she never swore an oath, all this stuff, and she was kind of just a badass where she was just like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and she set out to do it. They think making her an insufferable character is the way to do that. It's not. I mean, you can't connect with her character at all in this show because she's just angry all the time. Like someone would give her a chicken pot pie and she'd just like slap it out of their hands and be like, "What the fuck are you doing? I can make that myself, you motherfucker!"
Vegetarian motherfucker.
I had a problem with like her smugness. Like
All the
For
time.
I mean,
sure.
she was
For
like
sure.
smart. She's like I remember there was a moment on like a ship. She was like smirking, being like, "How did your parent die?"
Yeah,
Like, and it's like, bro, like,
she drowned.
are you? Are you like listening to yourself? Like,
Yeah.
so
Right.
like they try to make her the smartest person in the room every time, but they do make her insufferable. Like it's bad character
Yeah.
work, 100%.
And it's like with the Harfoots. What does she say? She says, "You're good because you're here to help." And Gandalf guy is like,
I
"Oh,
am
okay." It's like,
good.
what are you talking about? Like he doesn't know what
Yeah.
this means, and you just explained you're good because you're here to help. Well, how does he know what the hell that means? I don't know. It's like in the way that Gandalf guy just finally was just like, one moment he's like, "Hey,
Literate.
I'm peril," and then the next
Completely
moment he's like,
coherent.
"All right, follow your nose for the fruity taste that shows," or whatever the fuck he says. It's just like, how can he speak now?
That magic fight, dude, that awoken him.
Yeah, he
Like,
bonked his head, and now he's
yeah.
like a genius.
Yeah, that was a pretty dope fight, though. I will say that magic fight with him and like the bald, whatever the fuck those people were. I have no idea, but
Crones, whatever.
Yeah.
that harkened back to some Gandalf fight stuff, like
With
him and
Saruman.
Saruman.
Got a
Yeah.
staff in his hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question though too. Where is Saruman? Is he like in the lore at this point?
I don't know a whole lot of the like because I don't think there's a lot of like the wizard history in
Mm.
the main series and the main books because
No.
I don't know if like they're the Istar, the fallen stars to help guide
Yeah.
everybody.
Mm.
So I don't know if they all arrive at the same time or different times or how that
Mhm.
thing goes.
I know
But-
Saruman, I think, arrived first, but he's like the
Yeah.
leader. And I
Right.
mean, he's the one who's corrupted, and Galadriel never really trusts him. So, like, when the White Council's created, she tells Gandalf, "Hey, I want you to lead and do all this stuff."
Yeah.
And Gandalf's like, "I'm not worthy." And then Saruman, she's like, "I guess you're next in line." And she doesn't trust him, even though he's like, that's why when Gandalf dies, he comes back and he's like, "I'm Saruman," as he should have been.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's badass.
Yeah,
Especially
it's-
they meet Galadriel for the like
Yeah.
that's the.
Well,
I'm
like-
pretty sure they try to offer Gandalf a ring of power. The 3
Right.
that was big too, right?
yeah,
He's
and
like,
that
"Nah,
that's when he's like, nah. He
Mhm.
ends up with it, but
Yeah.
I see. Because, like, to me, like, this first season was not good, but, like, the promise of what's to come is, like, more enticing for me because now it's like
Mhm.
we have the rings. We can probably, like, shape geography and shit now with power, I would
Mordor is
assume.
now more.
Yeah, he's
recognized.
in Mordor now. Like, the Gandalf's on a quest now to become a wizard. And, like, there's engines moving now that weren't in the first season, that are, like, more enticing
Yeah.
for me as a viewer. I don't know. They'll probably fuck it up or whatever, lore-wise, but, like...
Yeah.
It's like, well,
I
okay,
think-
I kind of want to see what happens next.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? I mean, I came out of this a little more negative than I hoped, but I think it's fine. It's correct. So,
it's because
Yeah.
you flipped the coin, man. You're on your harsh side today.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to
Yeah.
take a little more of like a high road on this, just on an entertainment level, which I think I got across, but I'm not going to sit here and try to be like, Dad, you just don't get it, because I don't get it. Like,
I still don't get it.
right.
And like, if you enjoy the show, that's fine. That's cool. I know people who've enjoyed the show. I mean, they're middle-aged
Yeah.
women who just like a fantasy show, which is fine. That's up their alley. It's the people I work with. They're like, yeah, it's really fun. I'm like, okay. She's like, I don't know anything about anything, but it's fun to watch. I'm like, okay.
Strong
well,
female lead. So
I won't
go with
ruin
that.
it for you. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And like, I know Sarah's dad. He watched it, and they called me, and like, when they finished the last episode, I think it was like 9:30, and we were getting ready for bed. And he called. And he's like, hey, could you explain this to me because this doesn't make any sense? And I'm like, all right, Papa Squat, I'll
Yeah.
ruin this
Saddle
for
up.
you.
Sit
on
down. Let me tell you a story of Middle Earth.
Yeah. So I mean,
What's
I
not
know
done?
there's people who will enjoy it, and that is completely fine. It's up to you. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But we should also be entitled to our opinion of not liking it. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
the
So true.
creators come out and blatantly say we want to respect Tolkien and respect his legacy, and then they just don't, and they just
Do
piss
better.
it all away, piss on it. It's just kind of like, don't say these things. If you're just creating something
For
from
the
Middle
hype.
Earth, yeah, and then just
Yeah.
I don't know, don't Trojan horse us like this. It's just that's what kind of gets me going, just because like you can't make these promises and say these things and then just it's a blatant lie. I don't know.
Fair
So-
enough, yeah.
If you need
It's
your Middle
just-
Earth fix, man, just go back to the main series.
Exactly, and that's what I told
Okay.
Sarah. I said I
I
am
watch
going
it like
back
at
and
least once a
rewatching them.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Just because it's like I
It's-
know they're masterpieces.
Yeah.
man.
They are.
Like
Yeah.
anyone can enjoy them.
They're one
It's-
vision, though, too. I mean, you got it. Like, that's... I
Yep.
mean, Tolkien wasn't there for that either, though, I guess, and they achieved something,
No.
so...
It's just like I don't know, Peter Jackson and the crew he had on just knew
When
what
he
they
said-
wanted.
Yeah, but when Peter Jackson said he wanted to respect his legacy, he actually did.
He did mean
That's-
it, yeah.
Fact, yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff like I wanted JD Payne and Associates to fucking do, but they didn't. They said they would, but instead they were like, "Yeah, we actually just kind of did what we wanted, and we're getting trolled pretty hard about it. I don't get
Yeah.
it. It's like
Right.
you're getting trolled. Fuck off, man. I don't know.
You're the trolls, motherfucker.
I don't know. If you enjoy it though, good for you. I'm glad. I wish I did.
Hmm.
I really did wish I would enjoy it. but-
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, you provided well-reasoned arguments for why not to. I mean, that's all I ask for, like, people shitting
Yeah.
on stuff is give me reasons, Don't just say it's fucking shit. Just give me logical reasons, and you've literally swayed me. So, like, that, well done, so.
Yeah.
I encourage you to go look in the lore, though. I mean, I think you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
I know you don't
Yeah.
seem too invested or interested in it, but
No.
I think it is
Cool.
pretty, like, it's kind of what paved the way for fantasy, I think. I mean,
A lot of
Definitely.
ways, definitely.
kind of like the
Yeah.
daddy of fantasy, so
For sure.
I just feel like,
Grandpa Tolkien, all right?
yeah, I
old
just feel like
grandpa.
it's such a rich and majestic world that he's created, and I
Yeah.
have a lot more respect for it now
Mm.
than I did before, and I already had massive respect for what he'd done.
Well, at
so-
least the show gave you that, right? It brought the
Yeah.
love to you in a different way,
It did,
like-
it
did.
yeah.
It made me angry and made me dive deep into the
To the
Tolkien
real
world.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So at least thank you, JD Payne and Associates for doing
Forcing your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Yeah.
that. Thanks, God damn it! I didn't enjoy the ride, but you got me there, so whatever.
Yeah, it was the Trojan horse. They knew exactly what they were. Oh my god,
Right.
dude, I'm way too hard on shit. It's all fucking genius.
Smarter than us, man.
Yeah, it's just on another level, man.
Art.
Well, I mean, I don't know. maybe next year or whatever, 3 years when the second season come out, we'll talk
Yeah.
about it. But
I think they put a pause on it, so I think
Yeah.
we'll
we'll
have a couple
see.
years.
Really, yeah,
Maybe we'll be there. Maybe we'll be there.
we'll see. Yeah, will you guys be there? Who knows? Let us know.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, keep this debate going, I guess, because this is,
Yeah.
I don't know. I love debates like this, though, too, like where we can like have sides and like come out. I came out a different side, you know, and I appreciate good arguments. So I mean,
Yeah. No, for
well
sure.
done.
I mean, that's what we need more of, I think,
Yeah.
more banter and just hearing each side and, just gaining your own opinion on things.
Right.
I think that's getting lost these days, but, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to the Rings of Power discussions, guys. Join us on our next chat.
Hold up.
Oh, sorry.
Rings of Prime
There
discussion.
it is.
Right.
There it is. Change the thumbnail. All right.
Little
Well,
Photoshop.
peace out, guys. Stay gold.
Hey, gold.
Big gold.